You know that feeling, right? You're staring at all this messy, scattered data, and trying to get it into one clean output is just so frustrating. Well, today, we're going to dive deep and master the one tool designed to solve that exact problem, the aggregate node.
So yeah, it's a classic data headache. You've got info pouring in from all over the place, everything's got its own structure, and somehow you're supposed to bring it all together into one single usable item. How do you even do that without making the mess even bigger? Let's figure it out. And here is your solution, the aggregate node. Seriously, think of it like a super smart organizer. Its whole job is to grab those separate pieces of data, or even just parts of them, and group them together exactly how you want. This thing is the hero that brings order to all that data chaos.
To really get what this is all about, let's use an analogy. Imagine all your data items are just books, scattered all over a room. The aggregate node? That's your librarian. And not just any librarian, this one carefully organizes them onto a single, perfectly labeled shelf. It's all about creating one structured thing from many separate ones.
Okay, so you're ready to start organizing. But where do you begin? The moment you open the aggregate node, you're faced with a choice. And this first decision you make, it sets the entire foundation for how your data is going to be combined.
So, you've got two main paths you can go down. And trust me, understanding the difference between them is the absolute key to using this tool the right way. Let's break them down.
All right, path number one is individual fields. This is all about precision. You're telling the librarian, hey, put all the author names right here and all the publication dates over there. It's surgical. Then you have path number two, all item data. This is, well, it's more of a brute force approach. It's like telling the librarian, just throw everything from every book into one giant box. Both are useful for sure, but they solve very different problems. For the rest of this explainer, we're going to stick to that first path, individual fields. Why? Because that's where all the really cool advanced options, the power-ups, are hidden.
So now that we've picked our path, let's get into those advanced options. And the first one deals with something you're going to run into all the time, handling lists of data.
Just picture this for a second. You're pulling data together, but some of the things you're pulling in are already lists themselves. If you just mash them together, you can end up with a list that contains other lists, a nested list. And honestly, that can be a real pain to work with later on. So how do you fix it?
The solution is just a simple little toggle, merge lists. With this turned off, you get that messy nested list we just talked about. But flip it on, the node automatically flattens everything out into one single, clean, beautiful list. So the takeaway here is pretty simple. If you want a flat list that's easy to work with, you've got to make sure this option is turned on.
Okay, next up is something called dot notation. Don't let the name scare you. It's just a common shortcut for getting to data that's buried inside other data. So, for example, if you had a customer's info, you might use address.street to grab just the street name from inside their full address. Simple, right?
So, why on earth would you ever want to disable that? Well, it's for a very specific, kind of tricky situation. Imagine you have a field name that actually has a period in it, like version_1.2. The node might get confused and think you're trying to access nested data. So by disabling dot notation, you're just telling the node, hey, chill out. That dot is actually part of the name. It's a simple fix for a sneaky problem.
We've sorted out nested lists, but what about data that's just not there? Let's take a look at how the aggregate node handles those empty spaces in your information. So let's say you're combining a list of 10 things, but item number 2 and item number 7 are just empty, blank. By default, most systems, this node included, are just going to ignore them. They'll just toss them out. Your final list would only have 8 items, which could totally wreck your whole workflow if the position of each item actually matters.
This is exactly where the keep missing and null values option becomes absolutely crucial. By default, with it off, that empty value just vanishes. Poof, gone. But when you turn this option on, the node slips in a null value as a placeholder. This keeps the original length and structure of your data, making sure every single item is accounted for.
So here's the bottom line. If the order, the position, or the total count of your items is critical for whatever you're doing next, you need to turn this option on. It's all about keeping your data's integrity intact.
All right, let's move on to our final advanced setting. This one's a little different, because unlike the others, this one actually applies to both of the paths we talked about earlier, individual fields and all item data.
We're talking about the Include Binaries option. Now, binary data is just a fancy way of saying any file that isn't just plain text. We're talking images, PDFs, audio clips, spreadsheets, you get the idea. By default, the node only cares about the text data. So if you need the actual files to be included in your final output, you have to remember to turn this option on. It's absolutely essential for any workflow that needs to move or process files.
And that's really it. From picking your main aggregation path to fine-tuning how you handle lists, data gaps, and even files, you are now totally equipped. You have the control to group your data exactly the way you need it, building outputs that are precise, complete, and perfectly structured.
So look, we've gone way beyond just simple grouping here. You now have the tools to flatten those messy nested lists, preserve the structure of your data, and handle complex files like a pro. The only question left is, now that you can do all this, what complex, awesome aggregations are you going to build? Thanks for tuning in.